It's the football experience. We're back again. Um, Caleb, exciting weekend. Maybe not for our teams, but I don't know, for football. We neither of us got the results that we wanted, but considering other teams dropped points as well, sort of, it wasn't too bad, I guess, for an Arsenal fan. Even though we drew, Newcastle picked up all 3 points against Tottenham at Tottenham, which we'll take that as a consolation prize, I suppose.
You taking that as a prize?
Yeah, I think so.
Ooh,
Um,
Newcastle are genuine top four challengers. If that's what you're still focused on, I still think you should be focused on more than top four. But I would have wanted a
look,
draw in there. Well, I did want a draw
yeah.
because
Well,
my
well,
team is clinging to top four. Fucking terrible
top four,
performance, terrible
clean
result.
softball chances.
Or maybe
Yeah, look, I
clinging to being above bottom four. Maybe we'll just be safe. We lost to
clinging to not
a
get
yeah,
relegated.
we lost to a relegation rival, didn't we? Fucking
Yeah.
hell.
um, but like with that, it was actually interesting because I was all right. So basically, was it Saturday? Or,
Yep.
yeah, it was Saturday, wasn't it?
Yep.
I got my dates mixed up because I actually cooked a really nice meal on Friday. I like a slow cooked a piece of beef, and then like because I slow cooked it for about 5 hours, it just turned into like shredded beef. So I got my dates mixed up because I thought that was the reason why I missed out on the game, but I missed out on that game because I actually went to the shops to buy an umbrella. But when I got home, I was like, "What the hell? Like, what the game's over because it was an early kickoff goal. Like game's over and 1-0 Nottingham Forest. I was like, how did that happen? Like, so look, you watched the game, I assume, since you're a Liverpool fan.
Oh, I wish I didn't.
Um, begrudgingly watched the game.
Begrudgingly, yes. That's
Look, if you
perfect.
wanna, if you wanna go into it, apparently, like from what I've heard by accounts, some pundits and everything, like you guys were extremely poor. Um, so if you want to go into it, you can
Yeah,
take the
yeah,
floor.
we were poor. I mean, we could have won the game. There's no doubt about that. I mean, ironically, it was Van Dijk who had like four chances to win the game, and he cleared the first three. I mean, he thought he was defending, and I actually thought he started the game pretty well and was defending pretty well, and then I don't know. Salah should once again, give his paycheck back. I think Van Dijk should give his paycheck back for missing so many chances. Gomez again makes a terrible mistake in the build up to the goal. And it's just what the season, at least the first half of the season, is going to be like. I don't know how much hope I can hold that it's going to change in the second half of the season. To be quite honest, if you're not a fan of Liverpool, it's a fantastically inconsistent team, so you'll get to see performances and results like this. I mean, we're still suffering with a lot of injuries. It's not an excuse. You shouldn't be losing to Forest. Forest were very poor, I thought, but we just kept missing our chances, even though we were creating that many. But we kept missing the ones that we could have scored and just let them into the game. And obviously, we're playing away, and they get a little bump from that, and I guess it extends this little record of Liverpool not being able to win away from home in the league this season. So really, all we've got to cling on to is that home record, like I spoke about last time. It's the only thing that can give us an air of being good at the moment, because really everything we do away from home is damn near awful. Apart from that 7-1 at Rangers, which was in the Champions League. So yeah, Mo Salah, just one of those days where I definitely don't think he was worth any of the money that we're paying him. He should go back to his normal contract if he's going to play like this. I think he's been pretty poor this season, but I think Liverpool have been pretty poor. So great to see us get a result against City, look to try and back it up against West Ham, and then throw it all away against Forest. So I really don't know I think you've got to say that we're the weakest contender for top four, but the way results went later in the week, it wasn't that bad. The only team we actually lost real ground on was Newcastle in the end, which I'm sure we'll touch on
And
them
City.
later. City, who cares about City? I don't know. People going into the City game, I watched the City game straight after the Liverpool game. And the co-commentator going into the game was, "Oh, City have a great chance to put more of a buffer between themselves and Liverpool." And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? Liverpool are not in the same breath as City this season. Yeah, sure, we're the only team to beat them in all competitions, but for me, that's purely an Anfield factor. And at Anfield, we can beat anyone in the world. But when you put us on a level playing field against any team this season, or any good team, I should say, well, Forest aren't even good, and we lost to them. And so." Yeah, you put us on a level playing field, and I just don't fancy our chances at all. I think we're, especially with all the injuries, we're a very poor team, and I don't know if it's going to change. But yeah, no Thiago, no Darwin, and Darwin was a big loss in this game as well. I thought maybe he could have provided some sort of spark. But yeah, don't to anyone thinking that it's still Liverpool 1, Man City 2 in the Premier League, you need to watch some football because it is not that way and it hasn't been that way all season.
I don't know. So what are your expectations then for Liverpool? Like, or I guess like your desired expectations. That would be top four at this point, but realistic expectations is that maybe top six, so Europa League.
No, I think top four is still realistic. Obviously, I'm very down, and recalling this game is not helping my mood. Bring it up, but like I said, what we saw the other top four contenders do later in the weekend, top four still realistic. And remember, top four in recent seasons, that race for top four has been between good teams' names on paper, but the way the race generally pans out is teams slipping up, teams losing a lot of games, teams who it's not that title race pace that we've seen between City and Liverpool in three of the past five seasons. It's nowhere near that. It's that season where Sarri, Emery, Pochettino were all going for that top four spot. I think Leicester were in the mix as well that season. A lot of slip ups, a lot of us going down the stretch saying, "Does anyone actually want this top four spot?" And the way the other top four teams played, apart from Newcastle, but the way the other top four teams played later in the weekend suggests to me that that will be the same. So, as down as I can be on our performance, especially when you've been spoilt the season before, as down as I can be on that, I've got to remember. You've also got to remember, hey, look, like really until it's pretty much mathematically impossible, no one's out of a top four race because I think the way we see them going is yeah, lots of slip ups and lots of teams dropping points. So that's still a realistic target. It's still too early in the season as well. We're still, as Liverpool fans, just got our fingers crossed that we can put together a run. Probably not this side of the World Cup, but next side. Um, but yeah, I mean, abject, poor, whatever the opposite of superlatives that you want to throw out at it. It's just no good. Yeah.
Well, hang on. We're gonna have to pause things a little bit. I'm just getting like a little notification saying that the encoding is overloaded.
Oh
So
no.
I don't want anything to go wrong. So just bear with me while I try and fix that up. So hopefully nothing goes wrong. I know we're only 10 minutes in, but whatever. Um, well, look, the other like going into the other game from the weekend, like going into Arsenal's performance, like I guess um, we we're starting to look a little bit lethargic in our second
Mm,
halves, and it's sort of a little bit of set a high tempo or a high pace, but then we can't maintain it for long periods or enough games. Because like we went flying into the season, first 10, 12 games, like if you include the Europa League as well, and now the last 2 or 3 games we're starting to fall off. So it's a little bit worrying. I'm not sure what's causing that because players are getting rotated for the Europa League, but it was again a game where second half was like really poor, and this time, unlike at Leeds, we actually got uh, punished for it, but like not as could have been way worse in terms of like us not even getting 1 point out of it, but we should have put the game to bed in the first half. The refereeing was, I'm not going to say atrocious, but it was questionable. It reminded me a little bit also, like the way that Saka especially wasn't getting called on fouls. It sort of reminded me of the treatment that Salah was getting against City, where like he'd be getting held or he'd be getting pushed in the back and stuff, and like it's an obvious foul, but the ref is allowing it for whatever reason. Like I know it's a contact sport and everything, but if something's a foul, it's a foul. It doesn't, like, even if you have a high tolerance for it, if you're impeding on a player using an illegal move or force or whatever, then it's a foul. And I think I think that was also like in the first half at least, there was at least 2 penalty decisions that I thought they were penalties. They might have been a little bit on the softer side, but they were still penalties for me. Like if you're holding a player, like I'm not sure if you watched the game at all or the highlights, but like Jesus was being held in the box. If you're holding a player and impeding him from going forward, that's that's a foul. And if it's in the box, it's a penalty. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, but
No, I
we saw
don't.
it given in the Chelsea one.
Yeah, I don't agree. I thought the ref actually had a pretty good game, to be quite honest. I didn't watch it intently, but I definitely had it on while I had another game on. The way Jesus throws himself to the floor in that instance is enough for me just to say, even if there's more contact, it's enough for me to say, don't even give him the penalty because that bullshit is just so stupid to watch. And I like Gabriel Jesus, but in that moment, I just think the way he throws himself is just embarrassing. And you shouldn't get rewarded for that kind of behavior. And yeah, like you say, if you're going to give it, it's extremely soft. And we know that all the talk this season is about raising that bar. Sometimes it's a little bit to the detriment, but at the same time, we've got to. This season has to be a big one in changing players' behaviors. So to reward behavior like that, I think is wrong, and referees should continue to not reward it, even if they think they could give a soft penalty, like they did in the Arsenal Liverpool game. So yeah, even if you think you could give a soft penalty, I don't think referees should. So we should really try to change this behaviour. But I think your first point, and I would extend it to the whole game in this point, in terms of Arsenal's lethargy. Wouldn't think it's becoming a problem, but even in the first half of this game, I saw they were still playing with their normal patterns, but it was a step slower. So definitely in terms of like containing the ball, which I've been so impressed with Arsenal this season. But containing Southampton deep in the half, they didn't really do it. They let Southampton get out. They let players have sort of time to pick passes, pick crossfield switches in their own half, and they were able to get out. I know Arsenal were, for me, definitely the better team in the first half, and I thought Southampton looked like a team who were there to be beaten. But I just thought the fact that Arsenal were a step off the pace, and it's not even criticizing Arsenal because I think what we saw this weekend was the season just starting to become that grind. I think we're about to go into the clocks going back over in the UK. And I think you could sort of feel that. I think it's football starts to get a different feel in winter. And for me, particularly the Premier League, it's particularly in a normal season when you start getting that grind of fixtures through December, through the start of January. You can really start to feel that teams aren't sprinting the same way they did in the first bit of the season. It's not an effort thing for me. It's just this season. The season has become a grind, and you've got to get through these periods. And I think what we saw on the weekend overall was shown in the Arsenal game. Teams are starting to become a little bit more lethargic, starting to be fair, a lot of teams are starting to become settled. So a lot of managers are starting to settle on starting 11s if they hadn't already got there. But yeah, you just see teams playing the same patterns, but not to the same intensity that we might have seen earlier in the season. So I think that was definitely what cost Arsenal all 3 points. But as well, like I keep saying, on another day, I think Arsenal were deserving winners. But I guess fair credit to Southampton. They got a point. But yeah, I just thought Arsenal were just a little bit off it throughout the whole game. But to be fair to them, you could still, it wasn't a disjointed performance. It was just one where they were still trying to do the same things, but it just wasn't at the intensity required to win that game. Yeah. So, and again, defending, it was a nice incisive goal from Southampton, but I'm never quite confident of Arsenal when you can push them back deeper in their own half, and if you can make them defend their box a little bit more, then that's when I think that's, like we said last week, I think that's where they're not weak, but they're not as strong as when they press you and they put you under pressure in your own half. So if lethargy becomes a problem for Arsenal in coming weeks and the other side of the World Cup, and they can't use that game plan of pushing you back and pressing you into your own half, it'll be interesting to see how that develops because I guess we saw it a little bit for Liverpool last season, which that's obviously a Liverpool game plan when they're playing at their best. But late last season, we kept seeing Liverpool go a goal down. That kind of pressure wasn't still there, and games became a grind. So it'll be interesting to see if the same thing happens to Arsenal coming up. But yeah, I think it's just an overall thing that I observed in the weekend of football, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues. I just think the season's starting to become a grind now.
Yeah, well, we're pretty much a third of the way through. Uh, yeah, maybe also you got players. I think the World Cup starts in what, three weeks? If I'm not, like, it actually starts in 3 weeks, or do they go away in 3 weeks' time?
I think it might start in 3 weeks. While you're talking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, so it could also be that where, like, we've already seen like what like Diogo Jota is going to be missing from the World Cup, so maybe players are maybe subconsciously maybe dropping like maybe 5% of their levels. But then on the other hand, you see some players that they're playing out of their skins because they're potentially trying to make a last minute like conundrum for their national team coaches, to try and get called up for the World Cup.
I think that
So
was
I don't know.
Gabriel on the weekend. I thought he had a good game, and I always criticise him, so got to give him his dues when he plays well. I thought Gabriel was pretty solid, particularly in that second half.
Well, he didn't. I can't really remember him making any egregious errors or anything like that. I remember Partey giving the ball
Yeah,
away a couple
at
of
the end
times
of the
and
game,
dribbling in.
yeah.
Yeah, like that, which was really unusual for him. But even a couple of Arsenal players, like I just saw like wayward passes or over dribbling it.
Odegaard
Um,
needs to learn how to finish as well. He had another glorious chance in the first half. He just doesn't fill me with confidence in front of goal. If he can add goals to his game, puts himself right in the category of some of the best midfielders in the world.
yeah.
Just need some goals from him.
I'm not gonna disagree. It would be nice for a midfielder to chip in with. I don't know. Is 8 to 10 goals a stretch?
No, not the
I guess.
position he plays. He's the freer midfielder as well. I'd say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe
10 to 12 even.
maybe not in the Premier League. Maybe in all competitions, 8 to 10 goals. Because I think De Bruyne last season, I think that was his highest scoring season. He got 15 or 16. I'm not sure if that was Premier League alone or all competitions that he got 15 or 16. So like 8 to 10 is half of De Bruyne's output last season. Although De Bruyne's output last season without a striker,
Mm.
so your midfield is and your wide players are required to score more. Um, but yeah, I guess that leads us just quickly to touch on City. All I want to say is, you can't help but laugh at like when Haaland does something ridiculous, and the way he just like barges off the defender. Like it was literally like the analogy that I gave a couple of weeks ago, where it was a year 12 just barging off a year 8 or something like that, or a year 7. Someone like, someone like. But the thing with that is like the defender's probably his actual size as well, because defenders are generally a little bit stocky, a little bit stronger than strikers and midfielders, and he just made him look like an absolute child. Like, and then he just goes on to score like the beast that he is.
Yeah, and I don't know why while I was watching the game, I forgot that he scored the first goal, the goal that you're talking about, and I'm just like, all right, maybe Haaland's slowing down a bit. They gave him a penalty, he scores the goal, and then you go back and you're like, oh, who scored City's first goal? Oh, of course Haaland did. He gets another 2 goals. He didn't do anything in the match except for score 2 goals.
Yeah.
So especially if he
Well, he
becomes
made
City,
4 goals.
we know City have penalty problems. So if he becomes City's regular penalty taker, we can start looking at 40 goals. We already probably are looking at 40 goals, but it's just ridiculous that in a game where and City pretty much, I think, played like Arsenal in this game in terms of they did what they do, but they did it to a lesser level than they normally do it. But I think what gets City through is what City do is everything. Whereas Arsenal, I think, have like these certain things that they do extremely well, which has put them in the position they are at the moment. City are one of the most complete teams I've ever seen in my time of watching, or really intently watching football. They're just no weaknesses. They can do everything. They can win a game in any way that you ask them to win a game. And what makes them special is they don't normally have to resort to winning games in ways that are outside their comfort zone, so to speak. They can normally just win games because they're so dominant. They have the ball so much. They have so much territory. They have so much individual quality in front areas. They have so much specificity, and just like the perfect timing of passes and movement. And they're an unbelievable team. And they were a little bit wobbly after Brighton scored their goal, but Haaland scores 2, De Bruyne scores 1, and I did my top 25 list last pod, and yeah, they sort of justify why I think I had Haaland 1 and I think De Bruyne 4. So 2 of the top 5 players in the world at the moment, and it shows. And you can say that's the reason they get past Brighton. Maybe just that individual quality is the reason they get past Brighton, but they can win games in any way that you ask them to win games. And yeah, I'm still surprised we beat them because they still have a feel of an invincible team, but Anfield is their kryptonite apparently. So let's hope we get them in the Champions League. Maybe we can knock them out if we get through the group, because we still have to go away to Ajax later.
Well, it also might just be the matchup. You know how, like in boxing or an MMA, certain styles like counter each other. So even if a boxer or a fighter might be maybe 1 or 2% better technically, if he goes up against the wrong style, he ends up losing. Even if it's to a worse fighter. But the question that I have, and look, you can touch on that as well. But the question I have is, because you said City's the most complete team that you've seen, how would you compare them to Pep's Barca, either the 08-09 or the 10-11? Like, how would you compare it to those two?
Mm, I think there's no doubt that those Barca teams did what they did to a higher level in terms of particularly possessional play, in terms of defending with possession. I mean, it helps when you play in La Liga. I don't want to. That's not disparaging La Liga. It's just a different style of football. It's generally slower, particularly against the ball, so it gives you more time to do that. But obviously, that team transcended over into the Champions League as well. Champions League, it must be said, even if you play against an English club in the Champions League, it's still a different game to what you generally get in the Premier League, because it just becomes, I think, Champions League football, you could have two English clubs, and it will still be a little bit. It'll be a different game for me in terms of what you see compared to it if they were playing in the Premier League. That might just be the two-legged nature of it. I don't know. It might be the midweek nature. I really don't know what goes into that. It's just maybe just the higher stakes is what it is. But comparing, I don't know. It's a hard one to say. It'd have to be a deep dive sort of thing. But yeah, I think this City team, if you push them back, I trust them to defend their box better than that Barcelona team. Although that Barcelona team, if you don't ever feel in your mind that they were ever pushed back to defend like that. And if teams got out on them, they could counter on them, but they would never be pushed back. I think this City team can come under a little bit of pressure from other teams. We've seen it not very often, obviously, but we see it sometimes. But I think they have the defenders to deal with that threat for the most part. So I think that's a key difference. I think it's just the versatility as well, and it'd be interesting to see if you did a combined 11 who you would have thought have more quality in the team. So it's a hard one. You put me on the spot a
Well,
little bit, but yeah, if you've got an
well,
answer lined up, yeah, go on.
let's do a shallow dive at least. And like let's just try and go position for position. Are you taking Victor Val? We'll go to 10-11 one because although that wasn't they didn't win the treble, they
That's
won the
Pep's team.
double.
The 10-11 is Pep's team. The 08-09 he inherited, and I think he was
He gave
working.
his little tweaks to it.
Yeah, I think he was working not against players, but he was working with players he didn't maybe necessarily want, like Eto'o and
I
Henri.
think 08 or 09 had a little bit of individualism
Yeah,
to it in Eto'o and
yeah,
Henri, so it was a little bit more fun
yeah. I
and a
preferred
little bit
that team
more.
as well.
Yeah, it was a little bit more. It had that that degree of I want to say unexpectation, but that's not a word. But unexpectancy, that's the word. So although he was creating like those patterns of play that we now know that is like a Pep team. Yeah, it still had those moments of brilliance from an Eto'o or Henri or even a young Messi that would do their own thing rather than be set on a certain like trigger or something like, or a certain play. So, but we'll go the 10-11 one. We'll just go quickly through positions. Actually, I want to ask you this one before we go really quickly through positions. Um, the midfield, like if you go Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, do they outplay De Bruyne, Gundogan, and Rodri, or would you go Bernardo Silva over Gundogan? Like
you
it's really up to you
you'd probably put Bernardo Silva over Gundogan, and
for that matchup.
yeah, and I think they play in different ways. I think that 10-11 midfield, that Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta, they play a lot more controlled. I think this
I
City
don't know
midfield.
how they lose the ball.
Yeah, I don't know, but I think if that, I don't know how they defend any dynamism from players like De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva in particular. Because you look at the profile of Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets. The only one who's a little bit more defensive minded is Busquets, and I don't trust his mobility to keep up with De Bruyne and Silva. So, if City want to play that vertical game, but you're right. I think that's the conundrum. If City get on the ball, then they can go dynamic and they can expose the lack of physicality in that Barca midfield, maybe. But how do they get the ball in the first place? Because that Barca midfield very rarely lost control of a game and lost control of the ball. So that's the conundrum. Maybe this City team becomes the counter-attacking team. But like I said, they have all the facets in their game to do that. They can be a counter-attacking team. They have so much pace on the break and they can defend well enough to be reliable in terms of if that was a game plan of theirs. So yeah, like I said, I think that leads into the point about that Barca team were unbelievable at what they did well, but I think they were more limited in what they did well compared to this City team.
Well, do you want to go through a really quick, like, I'm going to just name off the players position for position. Do you want to do that, or do you want to do this at another time with a deep dive? Or
No, if you've got it ready to go, we can do it now. Shallow
I
dive.
haven't prepared anything, but I'm going to go off memory of who was in that team. So we'll start off with goalkeeper Edison or Victor Valdez. I'm picking Edison.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think Edison's better with his feet, and he's a better shot stopper as well.
Well, I don't know about better with the feet, but range of passing. I don't think Valdez ever had a 40, 50-yard ping to someone's chest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like the Haaland, Haaland goal.
Yeah.
Edison got the assist for that. I think Edison now has more assists in this season than Grealish. Okay, so we're going with Edison. Right back, Danny Alves or Kyle Walker?
That's not
That's
even
a
a
tough
question.
one.
That's not even a question, man. I like that Walker gives you a really good defensive option, and that
Yeah, he's more defensive.
yeah, that maybe goes into the versatility. But if you look at those names on paper, it's Danny Alves all day long.
All right. The centre back partnership. Yeah, I'm gonna go for partnership. I'm not gonna go. So you can't combine the two. So
Oh,
you have to pick
okay.
a partnership. Yeah. So PK Puyol or who would it be? Diaz and
That's the problem. If you have to pick a partnership, it has to be the Barca two. I think Diaz would have a shout of getting in if you could pick one and another. But if it's a partnership, it's Puyol and PK. It's not.
wait, who would be City's second best
Exactly.
defender?
Well, exactly. That's the question because they've rotated between Ake, Akanji, Laporte's just coming back. Maybe he could solidify the spot, but Stones is injured. Yeah, but they've been rotating through them all.
All right. You said Diaz could be in with a shout, but who would you replace? I'm guessing you would replace PK
If
with
we're going
Diaz.
10,
This is a
11,
prime PK.
if we're going 10, 11, I think you can replace Puyol, which is sacrilegious. But
Really?
yeah, I don't think Puyol was
Okay.
peak at 10 or 11. He was definitely peak in 08, 09. But if my memory serves me correctly, I think he was starting to get injury problems. Even in that 10-11 season, maybe starting to play it right back a little bit more as well. It was Mascherano at that point, I think Pep was starting to use as centre back next to
I,
PK.
I think slowly, yeah.
Yeah, so I think if it's that particular season, 10-11, then you could probably replace Puyol.
Okay, so we'll go 1, 2, 3. So it'd be PK was 1, Puyol is 2, or since we're going partnerships,
I could put Diaz above Puyol in that iteration. If we're talking 08, 09 Puyol, then I can't, but this iteration I could put Diaz.
Puyol did just come off of winning the World Cup.
Yeah, Puyol's a beast. It's well versed of how much I love Puyol. I think he made my first team for the last 25 years. So
everyone loves Puyol.
yeah, exactly. Except when he makes jokes on Twitter. Don't do that, Carlos.
It's just a bit of brotherly love between the two. Left back, I think was Abidal was the left back for Barca, but he came back from cancer or
yeah,
I can't remember
I think he played in that final. I think he played in
He
that
played in
final.
the final.
That's the kind of team I'm remembering. Yeah, I think he played a lot of that 10-11 season. But either way, I'm going João Cancelo. Either way.
You're going for João. Okay, yeah. So that's what Edison but since I went centre back partnerships, it is PK Puyol. So there's 2 Man City, 3 Barca. So here's the thing: if I go centre back, if I say centre back partnership, would I have to then be consistent and say midfield partnership?
Nah, because the midfields are trios as well.
Yeah.
So they're all different roles.
Okay. Holding mid, I'm guessing you're going to go with Rodri over Busquets.
Nah, I can't do that. No. I think I love Rodri, and like it might seem like I hate Busquets, but back in his pomp, back in the peak, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to say that you can put Rodri above Sergi Busquets, especially because he
Yeah.
won. He was a big part of both the teams, the 08-09 and the 10-11. So, nah, I can't. I'm not there yet to put Rodri. If Rodri could go on and win a Champions League this season, and maybe do some good things with Spain in the World Cup, then maybe if he could get in the team because Luis Enrique doesn't like any non-Barcelona based players. But yeah, no, I think there's no doubt in my mind at the moment, Rodri's one of the best holding midfielders. But if we're going all time greats, I'm still, as much as I seem to hate Busquets, I'm still putting him above Rodri.
Okay. So then the question is, are you dropping? I think Iniesta's like you can't replace him. So are you dropping Xavi for De Bruyne?
I am.
Really?
That's a personal preference thing, probably, but I just Kevin De Bruyne for me can do so much more than Xavi, and is just so much more dynamic. And I prefer watching that type of football. But I also acknowledge how important Xavi was for that Barcelona team. So yeah, it's a personal thing. But De Bruyne is just so much more multifunctional than Xavi, although it's sort of a microcosm of what these two teams are. I don't think it's surprising because Xavi and De Bruyne are probably the first two players you think of when you think of these great teams. Probably second or third, maybe for Xavi in particular, because you had Messi. But they are really the manifestation of what these teams were. Xavi was extremely good at doing what he did, and De Bruyne is very good at nearly everything that a midfielder should do. And I think that's what these teams are.
I'm personally going to keep Xavi in there as much as I love De Bruyne. I can't see him displacing a peak Xavi, and Xavi was at his peak. I think that was the last year of his peak, and then he started to trail off after that. And also, Barca have not won a Champions League since he left the club as well. So even though he didn't
Yep.
play like week in, week out in that 2014-15 season, and like because Rakitic replaced him, he was still part of the team. And yeah, they like so I'm guessing he took more of a locker room influential role in that season, and they haven't won it since then, which is fun fact. So that my midfield would then be Busquets, Iniesta, and Xavi. So I'm keeping the three together. And I think that extra bit of since they played obviously all three of them together, I think that extra bit of chemistry would then add to this fantasy team. Now with the front three, this is oh man, because Messi came. That was essentially the season that Messi started playing as a false nine. So the season before that, he played because Ibra came in the season before that. He was still playing as a right winger, and then he started to transition around midway through the season. Once Pep had his falling out with Ibra, he started to transition to a false nine. But this was his full season as a false nine. So the three options would then be Messi, Pedro, and David Villa, or who would be the best three from City?
Yeah, I don't know. I
Haaland,
think
obviously.
it's just Haaland. I think you could get creative and maybe keep, if you want to keep the whole Barca three, if you want to just go best players, then you might look at doing something where you get um, the Barcelona midfield can stay, and then maybe De Bruyne plays as a 10 behind Villa and Messi.
Yeah, you could potentially do that.
I
So
think
divert
or
divert from a
or Messi and Haaland, or I mean, if you want to keep a wide three, you can put Bernardo Silva on the right hand side because he's so multifunctional. Yeah, so there's options, but they're not the options of. I don't really like the wingers in either of these teams except for David Villa. I don't. I
who
would
isn't really even a true winger. He's
exactly,
actually a number nine.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Foden obviously is a great young player, but I don't think he's done enough to to be a locked-on certainty to be picked in any of these teams. Mahrez, I don't know. Mahrez blows hot and cold for me anyway. If we're talking about one of the earlier iterations of City, Sterling would have had a shout. But yeah, I don't fancy the options in those wide areas, except for, like I say, Villa, who isn't a wide player and could easily play through the centre with someone else as well. So it could be Messi behind Haaland and Villa even. I mean, there's a few options, but
Yeah,
I think the
that could be
best
an
is
option.
I think the best is two up front with one just in behind.
And then basically, because Danny Alves used to pretty much play as a right winger anyway, so
Yeah.
he'd be providing width on the right hand side. And Iniesta used to float out to the left hand side anyway. He wouldn't really get touchline wide, but he would get
Yeah.
pretty wide. He would get in between that space between the touchline and the start of the 16-yard box. So like that channel. Yeah, because it's hard not to. Even though Haaland's just come in, he scored 18 goals or 17 goals in the Premier League so far. So he's 4 goals away from equaling last year's Golden Boot winner. Or is a winner or winners? I think
I
Salah
think it
and
was
Son
winners, yeah,
shared it.
Son and Salah.
Yeah. So he's 4 goals away
Well, I
from
think
equaling that.
yeah,
Go on.
I think that's just a good point in terms of at the end of this season we could be looking a lot of these City players in a different light, particularly if Haaland continues to score like this, and particularly if City were able to win the Champions League. I think then we'll look at these players as pretty much immortals, and if we did this list again, maybe we have more in-depth debates about who goes where, particularly in that midfield. Because if De Bruyne and Silva are influential in winning a World, I mean, not a well, no, not a maybe for Portugal, maybe for I don't see it for Belgium. I think we went through that, but if they're influential in
Yeah, I
winning
think
a
that generation's
yeah.
past.
But if those players are key players in a midfield that goes on to win the league and win the Champions League this season, then and they finally cross that barrier of winning a Champions League for Manchester City, then there might be more debates to be had. But at the moment, I think the main takeaway is that we're taking mainly players from that Barca side. But they've had years to sort of
Cement
their
their names and their legacies.
yeah, exactly. Their accomplishments have marinated somewhat, and yeah, they've got this gloss that can't be broken. While we're watching the City team do it in real time.
Yeah, I think you know what. Let's get creative. Let's get a little bit creative with it. Let's go. That's so difficult though, because Messi didn't he score like 70 goals that season,
I don't know
or
if it
was that
was
the
that
season
one. I think it
after?
was the next one.
I
Yeah,
think that was the season after. Yeah, but he scored 50 or something that
yeah, yeah.
season.
That was regular.
So yeah, so it's hard not to play him through the middle as a false nine, considering he didn't create that position, but he brought it back because I think like Ajax from the 70s used to play like that. Um, that's such a difficult one because like what you suggested, like go Haaland, Villa up front, Messi as the 10 behind them, but then you're taking away what made Messi during that like I guess that stretch from like 09-10 to what 17-18. I guess that's 7-8 year stretch.
No, it's a tough one. I mean, you could even put De Bruyne as an out and out right winger and Villa as a left winger and keep Messi in his position. So there's options with players that
Yeah,
good. There's always options. Maybe Haaland is just a bit too early to put him in there.
probably yeah.
But like the way he's scoring, if he continues at the end of the season, we won't be saying that because City,
Yeah, at the end of the season, if he bags 50, then it's like okay, he definitely needs to be in this fantasy combined 11.
especially if you're
Like
picking an
100%.
individual season from both teams, like we're picking this City team and that individual Barca. If you went over the whole time,
Yeah,
it might be different. But yeah,
yeah. Well, let's revisit this at the end of the season,
yeah.
depending on what City accomplished. But I actually don't think that it will change too much. I think like because you for instance you dropped Javi for De Bruyne. I didn't. I think the back four pretty much settled, and considering that City, they've had injuries to their back to their centre back, so they seem to be playing with a different partnership almost every game so far this season. So they haven't settled on a centre back partnership. So that the centre back partnership might stay as PK and Puyol anyway. But yeah, that the front three might change, but we'll revisit it at the end of the season. So we'll try and make a mental note to come back to this one. But let's get into the juicy game of the fixture. Unless you want to quickly touch on Tottenham Newcastle before we get into United.
Oh, that's definitely one of the juicy games. Yeah, I thought Tottenham boos at the North London Stadium. They go 2-0 down, and Lloris makes.
Just quickly,
go on.
Just quickly, do you? Oh, I'm guessing you're going to go on to that. Do you think that's a foul or no?
No, not enough. Lloris has to clear that ball. Has to do more. I think
And it looked like Wilson sort of he stopped. So he stopped. So he didn't run through Lloris. He stopped.
Yeah,
and it almost looked like he was about to take a step back as well.
yeah. I think he was changing direction, and Lloris just ran into him. And I think it's a fair decision not to give anything there. Would I be up in arms if that was given as a foul? I wouldn't be happy, but I wouldn't be up in arms. The fact that he didn't give it real time, I think stick with that decision. There's no clear and obvious error there. I know it leads to a goal, but when you goalkeep like that, you should concede goals because that was an awful bit of goalkeeping.
18-yard.
Yeah, exactly. It's an awful bit of goalkeeping, and you've got to do better in that situation. So, I think the main standout for me was just how physical that Newcastle midfield is, and we've seen it all season, but they were actually going up against, you could probably say, an equally physical midfield in Tottenham, and I thought they ran the show, particularly in the first half, over the three midfielders that Tottenham put out there, and Bentancur, for me, is one of the best midfielders in the world, and I thought he was the one who held his own, but Basuma and...
Really?
Yeah, I think for what he does, it's not traditionally what he does, but I think it's two pronged. It's for what he does in terms of how energetic, how quickly he covers ground, how determined he is with running with the ball, his ability, to be fair, to deliver the last pass or score a goal, I think is improving week on week. But it's that, and it's also, I don't think there's all that many great central midfielders in the world at the moment, not in the traditional role anyway of holding your position in the middle of the park and controlling a game in there. I think there's very few of them. There's a lot of like up and down box to box midfielders who like to vacate the central area and make forward runs or track all the way back. You could even see it with a player like Joelinton in this game. He's a player who starts in midfield but very rarely plays the position. He likes to go up forward and out wide and offer that out ball, which he does so well. But yeah, I think football, big thing on the macro level that I'm sort of looking at in football this season, or maybe it started happening last season, is the midfield's really being emptied. And a lot of teams are playing a lot of like 3-4-3, which is only two central midfielders, or 4-2-3-1, but that attacking midfielder is more of a second striker. So yeah, that midfield area is really empty. Whether that is because there's a perceived lack of quality and managers are accounting for that, or whether this is just the new style and teams want to go up and down a lot more and go more vertical. Maybe something that we've seen from Liverpool in previous season is having an influence on a lot of these teams as well. But yeah, I don't think it's an unfair statement. He made the short list of the top 45. He didn't make the top 25. But yeah, Bentancur's been one of Tottenham's most important players, and I know. And going back to it, Tottenham have had a very rough week, and their style is starting to tell, where they're losing these games that maybe at the start of the season they were drawing or winning. And Newcastle have gone through, like I touched on, a really tough period of fixtures, and they've still only lost one game, and they're in the top four now. So Yeah, Newcastle are a real deal, especially if Almiron keeps playing like a world beater because him and Sam Maximan were the two players I said they need to up their tallies in terms of goals and assists if this team was going to go anywhere. And I know Sam Maximan's been injured, and just quietly, I think he might struggle to get back into the team because I think the rotation that they get between Joelinton and Willock is pretty important for the way Newcastle play. It's almost like Joelinton lines up as the central midfielder, but whenever Newcastle have the ball, he goes and plays almost either as a left winger or as an out and out second striker to be that out ball, to be that physical presence. And Willock can then come inside and play more of the midfield position. So if you're trying to put Sam Maximan into that role, it's not the same. You'll have to figure out the new rotations between them because Sam Maximan's quality isn't as a midfielder really. But yeah, Almiron's just taking it to the next level. He's scoring week after week, it seems now. Good goals as well. And yeah, his production has upped, and it's no surprise that Newcastle's results have also upped. And we had a taste of it second half of last season, but we're just seeing a carry on of it. And yeah, it's hard to say that they're not genuine top four challengers at this point.
I guess we didn't talk about them for nothing when we were comparing them to United last season. Remember, towards the end of last season. Also, like, how crazy is this? I don't know whether just maybe it's crazy to me, maybe it might sound crazy to you as well, but like Newcastle are going to most likely, or they should provide two midfielders, possibly even two starting midfielders for Brazil.
Yeah, it won't be two, but I think we talked about this last pod and how they might hold the key for Newcastle, but they should have two in the squad. There's no doubt about that. I think it's a choice.
But who would you start then in the
It
midfield
depends.
for
It will
Brazil?
depend completely on the game. If it's a game you expect to control with a lot of possession, and maybe a midfield that you don't have to worry about being up for a physical battle, then it'll probably be Guimaraes next to Casemiro. But maybe there's games where you want to bypass the midfield a little bit more and you want that out ball and you want that physical presence of Joelinton, and then he's a fair shout as well. So, yeah, they really do have two. For me, it'll be a crime if Tite doesn't start one of them really in games because if I have to see Fred starting next to Casemiro, I'm going to rip my eyeballs out. I really don't want to see that. The Joelinton and Guimaraes are so much better than Fred for me. Even Paquetá, I don't want to see that either. So that would
He's
be
injured. I think he might miss it.
well, I'm not going to say good
Maybe.
because that's obviously
Yeah.
terrible news for him personally. But in terms of the overall of the starting 11, if that means Guimaraes or Joelinton get into the team, I'm all for it. So yeah, I hope that at least one of them start, but I think it's a horses for courses sort of thing on which one starts next to Casemiro for me.
Well, why can't both of them start in midfield three?
Nah, because you'll have Neymar. Oh, it depends now with the injury to Richarlison as well. Maybe he doesn't play, so you could tweak the system so that maybe you play. I don't know how that would work. It might be Vinicius sort of as that left winger, but the one who doesn't really track. Jesus up front, I guess. Yeah, but Neymar then has
Who
to
plays
play.
on the right?
Neymar would have to play one of the wing positions. Who plays on the right? I think.
Possibly, unless you
Well,
unless
that's
you put
been
Martinelli there, but he's been playing on the left. So
exactly. Yeah, I think it's better because I think that was Richarlison's position has been the right. So they might put Paquetá out there. I don't hate Paquetá as a functional wide player. I don't rate him as a midfielder, but yeah, maybe the right is a bit of a conundrum. You got Rodrigo as well who can play there.
yeah.
But yeah, I think in terms of Neymar's best position, I think he's a 10. So it means that you've only got room really for a double pivot, unless you want to change the system completely.
Well, that's one we'll have to look out for, I guess. Once the squad is announced, and then also once they actually play their first game to see who he starts with. So could be interesting. But Yeah, I think what you said, it'll be a crime if both of those don't make the squad. Like both of those should make the squad. Um,
And just
I
quickly,
guess we'll see. Yeah,
Joel Joelinton has almost been like a new signing for Newcastle, and I know
yeah, because he transitioned from striker, didn't he?
exactly.
Or
It's been
one of the wings.
ages. I guess like we've seen it for ages, the second half of last season and now this season. But I guess the big surprise for me over summer was Newcastle's relative inactivity, given what we thought might happen with the new investment coming into the club. But the fact is, they've almost got a new signing in this guy, and they've almost bought a top class central midfielder in terms of Joel Linton becoming that guy and just reinventing himself. And let's not forget, I think they spent like 40 million for this guy from Hoffenheim. So uh, for a club like Newcastle size, I know they now have a lot of money, but it was important to get the best out of him. And if Eddie Howe has one great accomplishment in the game so far, that is it. Turning Joel Linton into a central midfielder who is not just a central midfielder, he's a very good central midfielder. Is one of the more incredible things I've seen in recent season because a lot of the time I'll watch games and I'll watch players and I'll think the Alex Iwobi one, for example. I always thought that guy shouldn't be playing as a winger. He's not built for it. He doesn't have the physical capability and, more importantly, the technical capabilities to be a winger. But if you played him in a midfield three where he could get up and down a little bit more and drive with the ball through the middle, I think he could be a pretty decent player in there. And lo and behold, we've seen that in recent seasons. But the Joel Linton one, I never saw in a million years. I never would have thought this guy's attributes lead him to being a really good central midfielder. Maybe a left winger in the Mario Mandzukic sort of mold at Juve, but as a central midfielder, I never saw that one. And kudos to Eddie Howe for seeing it, and kudos for Jolinton for making it work. Because yeah, that's been sensational. What's happened there?
Well, hey, maybe Eddie Howe watched some tapes back from my under-18 season when I transitioned from a striker to a midfielder as well. So
Definitely it.
so it wasn't his idea. It was our dear juniors coach's idea that he got from. Hey, anything's possible. He went back on the FFV like website and was like, "Hey, on what happened here? Why is this player now playing in midfield?" Um, all jokes aside, though, let's fingers crossed. Like I said before, fingers crossed both of those Brazilians make the squad at the very least, and hopefully we get to see them play in the World Cup as well. And the main course, I guess, besides like we'll touch on some of the Champions League games as well, but the main course from the weekend, Chelsea United. We'll just quickly touch on that. I don't think there was too many takeaways really from that. It was, I guess, the only one thing is like United had control for the first 30 minutes of the game until Kovacic got introduced into the game, and then Chelsea. I wouldn't say they necessarily took over from there, but like let's say that like the possession stats won't necessarily back this up, but let's just say United had it was like maybe 60-40, 70-30 in United's favor of like control of the game and overall I guess vibe of who is going to score first. And then once Cucurella comes off, I'm not sure whether it was that was a tactical sub or whether it was
It was
injury.
definitely well, it definitely looked like a tactical sub. I think that's how Potter explained it as well after the game.
Yeah, because the commentator mentions that, like, oh, like was Cucurella injured, and then he never touched back on it, like whether he was injured or not, because he was like, this is strange that he's coming off after 30 minutes, but like after that, it swung in Chelsea's favor, not overwhelmingly in their favor, but enough to make it maybe 60-40 Chelsea's favor, 55-45 Chelsea's favor, but like once Kovacic came on, United they started to lose I wouldn't even say midfield battle, but they stopped They stopped attacking Chelsea as much, essentially, from what I saw, and it didn't just suddenly mean, oh, Chelsea just like were on the front foot, they were attacking non-stop. No, it just became more of a 55-45, 60-40, like not really swinging it massively in anyone's favor. Whereas the first 30 minutes, I felt like it was way more in United's favor. But yeah, that was a good change by Potter to see that after 30 minutes, because like who knows, maybe if he didn't make that change, United probably could have scored before halftime.
Yeah, it was definitely a ballsy change. I think it sort of hides the fact that he got it wrong from the start, though. Because United didn't throw any curveballs in there. United just played their 4-2-3-1 as we expected them to play. So to admit that you got it wrong like that from the start was definitely ballsy and courageous, and the right thing to do in that moment. Even though if I don't know, Cucurella didn't look too mad about it, but you can't think he'll be too happy about coming off 30 minutes into a game for tactical reasons. But yeah, I thought you're pretty much right, but I thought it was a little overrated in terms of the effect it had on the match. I guess the match itself was pretty boring, so we tended to
Yeah.
focus on the tactical ding dong battle between Ten Hag and Potter, particularly with Potter throwing something like that in the mix. I thought it probably got into Ten Hag's head a little bit too much. If you listen to his post match press conference, I know Jeff Shreves is focusing on the fact that hey, he made a tactical change, so let's make it all about this because the game wasn't that good. But yeah, I thought the way Ten Hag was explaining it, like, oh, we had to be cautious about what they were doing. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but we had to be cautious about what they were doing after the changes and what they did and how we could cope with that. I would have looked at it the other way because, particularly after the first 30 minutes, I just thought if United play and do what they do with high intensity and high tempo, then I think they'll beat Chelsea no matter what tactical system Chelsea put out there. I thought Chelsea were ready to get beaten at the start of this game, and I thought then Ten Hag got into his own head a little bit with what Potter was doing, and then started to become a little bit too cautious in what he was doing. Exemplified by McTominay and Fred coming onto the pitch. I didn't think the game was ever going to be a midfield battle with United don't have the strongest midfield anyway. I think they empty that area a lot, like I spoke about before. And Chelsea, if they're playing a 3-4-3 and no Kovacic in it as well, who's probably their best midfielder when he's playing well, apart from N'Golo Kante, who is obviously injured for a while now. But yeah, it was never, for me, it was never going to be a midfield battle. So why Ten Hag wanted to make sure that they could have that midfield. Like maybe Chelsea can have the midfield, but who are they gonna worry you with up front anyway? Aubameyang was poor as usual in recent weeks. Mason Mount had an off-color game. Who's scaring me? They're going to bring on Kai Havertz. Is Raheem Sterling going to scare me? Maybe a little bit, not really. So even if they want to bolster up that midfield, let's say if I'm Man United, I'm saying screw it. Let's just bypass the midfield, and we're more energetic up front. We're more mobile up front, and let's just get at them and let's win this game. But I guess going to Stamford Bridge, you'll take the point. I don't think they were fortunate to get the point because I think on the balance of play, a point is all either team deserved. But I thought the three were there for United. I didn't think the three were there for Chelsea really, but Potter probably saved one with his tactical changes. So yeah, definitely a ballsy move, but a little bit overrated for me because I think if United just decided to go for this game, I think it was there for the taking, and I still stand by this. I just think United are more interesting, and their future looks brighter than Chelsea's at the moment. I don't fancy Chelsea at all, particularly without Reece James, who is such a big creator for them. Yeah, Chelsea just looked abject, and were given yet another gift in terms of the penalty. And happily, from a karma perspective, it didn't translate to a win that they just didn't deserve, in my opinion.
I think we sort of touched on it, but we can go into more detail now. You don't think it was a penalty?
No, I think it was a penalty, but it was a gift. Like McTominay just not looking at the ball, just holding. Like, why are you doing that? It's stupid. So, like, you can
See that one was way more of a penalty than the Jesus one, but
same concept. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
yeah. But this one was more of one because I think because the defender was, but then that sort of contradicts, I guess, the whole point as well. Because I was going to say because the defenders in front of wait, who got fouled again? I can't remember.
was
Um,
it Broya?
um,
Broya?
Broya, yeah,
Yeah,
Broya. So and McTominay was basically blocking him from going into his run, and he was blocking him by holding him with both arms around his whole body.
and it was for me. It was the face guarding as well. He's not looking at the ball. He needs to at least get on a side turn and sort of like
Yeah.
maybe keep him
So
at arm's length.
I think if he was doing it with one arm, he could have got away with it. So if he was doing it, I think with his left arm across his stomach, but he went left arm across his stomach and then right arm across his back. Once you do both arms, it's 100% penalty. If he went with just one arm, he could have got away with it, but I don't think you can defend Broyo with one arm because he looks like he's a pretty strong lad. Where for instance, if it was a Sterling, he probably could have got away with defending with one arm like that. But yeah, like if you're doing that in the box, you deserve to be given a penalty against.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was a penalty, but like I said, it was a gift as well. McTominay came on and gave him a gift.
Yeah, but it wasn't a gift from the
No,
referee. It was a gift
no.
from a stupid play by a player.
Yeah,
Um, but overall, I think you're right in saying that the game deserved to be a draw because neither team really um, did enough to warrant a win, I suppose. Um, so on the balance of it, I think a draw is a fair result. If you want to really look into it, maybe slightly edge towards a United win, maybe like 52, 53%, but overall 50-50 was the balance of play for me. But yeah, anything else that you took away from that game or no?
no, not really.
It wasn't
Just
exciting.
no, it wasn't.
Chelsea
It
just looked
wasn't.
like a blunt object.
I think this weekend wasn't very exciting. There were a couple like exciting games from France and Italy, but even like they were both 4-3s. And even watching them, it's just like, is this an exciting 4-3 though? And like the conclusion I came to was not really. It was just a lot of mistakes at either end have led to these goals that have been scored. So yeah, this was definitely for me to kind of put a dampener on it was definitely one of the worst weekends of football we've had this season. I didn't think there
Yeah,
was much inspiring to be seen anywhere, really.
possibly because I don't know, but because then you have midweek fixtures from the Champions League, but so like you can't really say that because it was the midweek fixtures that made it, I guess, uninspiring. Um, but I guess because teams that don't play midweek, they also played midweek. So they were also probably, a slight level below where they usually and their usual standards. But yeah, I think the way you summed it up at the start was we're getting into those colder winter months now, and it's starting to become a grind. And this was like the perfect weekend to encapsulate that. But if you have any other games from around the leagues that you wanna touch on, we'll wrap it up with the Champions League.
Well, we'll just run through. Yeah, we'll run through the leagues quickly. Syria. I mean, one thing to maybe look for. I think Juve are primed to maybe have a little bit of a turnaround coming up. It seems like maybe they've released the shackles of all right, we're probably not getting out of the Champions League group now. Almost definitely not getting out of that group. We're languishing behind. We're not going to win Serie A because Napoli, AC, probably those two chiefly are well ahead of us. Both teams winning. Napoli winning late on against Roma with an absolute belting goal from Victor Osimhen, who got in behind Chris Smalling, who made... People will say he made a mistake. He did make a little mistake to let him in behind, but the finish at the end of it was fantastic in a game indicative of the weekend that didn't really inspire, maybe indicative of Mourinho and his tactics trying to stifle Napoli, but Napoli still get the result at the Olimpico against Roma. So, yeah, Juve are well behind Milan and Napoli and not going to get out of the group. So I think the shackles may have just come off, and now maybe they're just sort of... They might feel a bit freer in terms of, well, the season's already a disaster. There's nothing... It can't get much worse from here. So I think they're starting to look like they're a little bit more settled, look like they're turning a corner. You can see that with a 4-0 win against Empoli at home, following I think they won convincingly last week as well. I have it here. Oh, well, they won in the Turin derby in the weekend before. They won convincingly. So they're starting to get some good results in Serie A, so that might be one that we can see turn around. Maybe it couples with Chiesa coming back as well. And the other game I wanted to touch on from Serie A was we lost yet another unbeaten record with Atalanta losing 2-0 to Lazio. And Lazio, I brought this up with Tottenham last week. They might have been an injury away from being good. It hasn't panned out that way for Tottenham, that's for sure, so my theory's wrong there. But with the injury to Ciro Immobile for Lazio, in this game in particular, I thought it helped them immensely, having Felipe Anderson, Sakani, and Pedro as a sort of fluid front three up front. And Atalanta like to favour the man marking system, particularly at the back with their three centre-backs. And the Lazio front three absolutely ran them ragged. I thought this was easily the most impressive performance of the weekend I saw from any club in Europe. Lazio still have the best defence in Serie A. I think it's a run of 6 clean sheets in a row now. It's not something you'd attribute to a Maurizio Sarri team, that's for sure. Milinkovic-Savic is still being asked to do absolutely everything for that team, and he's still doing it to an absolutely fantastic level. To be fair, he's getting help from particularly Vecino in the midfield, who's having a bit of a renaissance in his performances. And it's interesting when you see players like sort of improve. I wouldn't say develop because Vecino's not a developmental age, but it almost looks like he's picking up things from Milinkovic-Savic and incorporating them into his game. And I think we see that a lot in players when they get their moves to other clubs and they're playing with truly very good players. And I think we can see that in this case. So, yeah, Lazio were thoroughly impressive to go away to Atalanta, away to Bergamo and win 2-0 against... It was an off-colour Atalanta team, no doubt. I think I had Koopman as in my top 25. He had his worst game of the season. And he's so instrumental in that midfield for Atalanta. But yeah, their unbeaten record's gone and Lazio move up to third. So Serie A is still continues to be the most exciting league, I think, in terms of league position, because I think we've only got Inter 1-4-3, and that's one of the games that I said was an exciting, non-exciting game. They won in the last minute away at Fiorentina, but yeah, they win the game and they stay in 7th place. But they're on 21 points and Napoli are on 29. So between 7th and 1st, there's only 8 points. And between 7th and 2nd, in fact, there's only 5 points. So Inter are only a win off Lazio in 3rd place. So Serie A is obviously super competitive up the top. La Liga was an interesting one this weekend. Real Madrid, Fede Valverde again with an unbelievable strike to put the cherry on a 3-1 win. Yeah, another 3-1 or on a 3-1 win against Sevilla, one of 2 only unbeaten clubs in Europe this season, joining with PSG, obviously doing a higher competition in La Liga. Barcelona get a resounding 4-0 win against Bilbao, which was a surprising one. Maybe not in terms of the result after I saw the team sheet, but the team sheets from Valverde, Ernesto Valverde and Bilbao baffling. He left out Ika Mornain and Orhan Sunset from his midfield, who Sunset in particular has been Bilbao's most impressive player. You could put him as maybe 1A or 1B with Nico Williams this season, but those two, Sunset in particular, has been, for me, the best player at Bilbao, and to leave him out for a game of this magnitude, and to see him come on after 60 minutes when the game's already done, I'm confused there. I tried to Google it and look. Was he injured? Was he suspended? Has he had a fallout with Valverde? Like, what's going on there? Why would you leave him out of this game? And they were duly punished because Barcelona came out, and Ousmane Dembele in particular came out firing. He is very much a joker in the pack player. You don't know what you're going to get from him, but when you get good, you get very good. So I think he definitely scored the first goal. I think he had a couple of assists in the game, and yeah, Lewandowski obviously scored again as well. So that's a big win for Barca, and Barca reel off wins against Villarreal and Bilbao in back-to-back home games after what was definitely the worst week of their season, probably will be the worst week of their season, but really good for them to bounce back. We're using Frankie de Jong and Sergio Busquets as a double pivot in there for this game. So at least they had both of them in there, but yeah, Xavi continues to tweak tactically. I like how tactically flexible he is as a manager. I just wish that his personnel selection was better at times, but you can't argue with what's happened in the last week for Barca as they've turned it around. Atletico go away again to another tough place. I know 2 weeks ago they went to Bilbao and got a 1-0 win. This time they go to Betis and get a 2-0 win. Antoine Griezmann, I think, scoring both in that game, one directly from a corner. Atletico were unimpressive, but the big thing for Atletico is that they seem settled. Simeone seems settled on a formation and personnel, and they've really got leaned into this 4-4-2. And I think a big part of it is he's now allowed to play Griezmann after all that transfer debacle has been settled, and now they're starting with Griezmann. Yeah, they sorted it out. I think they've bought him out right now, so they can start him in games, and he's made a world of difference because really he is still a top player, and he'll be pretty pivotal for France going into this World Cup. So huge, 2-1 was the result. Sorry, Betis did get a late consolation in that game, but yeah, huge wins in 2 of the last 3 games for Atletico, and they're sort of somewhat cementing their place as the third best team in Spain, particularly with other results going their way. I know Sociedad lost at Valladolid, which was a bit of a surprise, given how well Sociedad have been playing recently. And then obviously they knock off a direct rival in Betis, and Bilbao sort of knocked themselves off in not giving themselves a chance at the Nou Camp, which was really disappointing to see because I thought that had a chance of being the best game of the weekend. But once I saw that Bilbao team sheet, I was just like, what the hell's going on here? Who's playing in this midfield? Yeah, I don't think there was much to say from France. France had another 4-3 between Monaco and Lille, but like the mistakes in that game were bloody awful. So yeah, not much to say from there. PSG get their Friday night win, stay top of the league, stay undefeated. Messi, it was the Messi and Mbappe show. I thought they combined really well without Neymar there. But Neymar's without doubt for me been PSG's best player this season. So that's not going to be a regular thing. And Germany, Union Berlin. After I talked them up after last weekend, promptly go and lose to second bottom Bochum 2-1. They're still top of the league, which is just crazy to think. But yeah, Bayern are now firmly breathing down their necks after I forget who they beat. I think it was Hoffenheim that they beat. So, and that was like, what was that, second versus fourth going into the weekend. Bayern were just so much better than them, and just sort of the Bundesliga continues to be thoroughly uninspiring. But yeah, that's I think that's the roundup of what I saw from all over Europe. I don't think I'm missing anyone, so and that will be a good transition for us to go into previewing, I guess, what we expect to see in the Champions League.
Well, I guess with since there's only 2 games left in the group stages of the Champions League, some of the I don't think any of the groups are really wrapped up. Like you have some teams that have qualified. It's just a matter. I think this will just cement whether they go through as first or second, essentially. The big talking point is obviously Group C with Bayern into Barca. Um, Barca essentially fighting for, I guess, Champions League survival and also hoping that, well, firstly, they need to beat Bayern, but also hope that the result in the other game is either a draw or a loss for Inter. Because if Inter win, then even with a win against Bayern, they're out of the competition. They're going to be dropping down to the Europa League for the second season running. So there's that big one, and also Group E could potentially knock out. It could potentially knock out AC Milan if they lose. I believe, depending. Actually, I'm not sure whether even if they lose, they can get mathematically knocked out.
It
No, they
depends.
can. Yes, if Salzburg
Yeah,
win.
yeah, exactly. If Salzburg win,
Yeah,
then they're out.
because
If
they
they
lost
lose,
twice to Chelsea.
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of jeopardy there. Not sure if Juventus are essentially knocked out as well, aren't they?
They
They're
need,
playing
yeah,
against Benfica.
Maccabi to beat. I think both PSG and Benfica.
No, just one of them. Just Benfica because Juventus are playing Benfica tomorrow, aren't they? Or on Wednesday.
Yeah, true. So,
So they need Maccabi to beat Benfica,
yeah, and they're playing. Maccabi are playing at home, so maybe.
and they beat Juventus.
But Juve still need to beat both PSG and Benfica
Yes.
and beat them.
So yeah, so that's there's a bit of jeopardy in some of those games.
Yeah, that's much
But
like the
other than that,
Barca Bayern group where you don't really expect. But Inter, the running joke for anyone who knows Italian football is if there's one team who could throw that away, it's Inter at home to Pilsen. So I don't expect them to, but we'll see. Maybe it could be juicy going into that last game. It's just disappointing that that group sort of isn't as exciting as it probably should be. I think it should be more exciting going into match day 5, but we have this air of it's inevitable that Barca are pretty much going to get knocked out. I guess those more even groups like the group that the much maligned Tottenham, Marseille, Sporting, Eintracht group is wide open, and same for that Chelsea, Milan, Zagreb, and Salzburg group. They're wide open as well, but the rest. Liverpool play Ajax away from home. Ajax need a win to stay in the competition. So I'm obviously hoping that they don't do that. But the way Liverpool are playing away from home, I pretty much expect Ajax to win that game, to be quite honest, especially if Liverpool don't have a lot of key men back either. It's going to be a tough one. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like match day 5 of the Champions League should be a little bit more exciting than what it is sort of shaping up to be as we're talking it through now.
yeah, I guess because most of the groups are pretty much settled. Like maybe if Juve didn't lose last week to Maccabi, or 2 weeks ago, was it last week? No, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Like then they would be on. They'd be on 6 points, and then it would be 8 points, 6 points.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
like they shot themselves in the foot essentially.
Oh, definitely. A lot of big clubs underperforming. Juve
Yeah, and
in
also
particular.
Barca drawing at home as well. If they won that game, then I'm not like we talked about this because they removed away goals for the knockout fixtures. I'm not sure whether removed the away goals to split the groups. If teams are like sharing wins and also sharing points. So yeah, it's is it the but like going into it, there was only really two interesting groups at the end of it. Maybe
Yeah, and
three with Liverpool, Ajax, and Liverpool.
yeah,
Liverpool, Ajax, and
that one could be a lot more interesting if Ajax are able to do their job and win that game at home. I guess second place for Group B is pretty interesting as well, with Atletico 2 points behind Porto at the moment. Leverkusen aren't completely out of it on 3 points at the bottom.
yeah.
Um, so there's a lot of like things that you have to take into consideration in terms of head-to-head record that um, I guess I haven't really done in terms of who can progress from the next two games, but yeah, those interesting groups, and one's interesting by default because it has Tottenham, Marseille, Sporting, and Eintracht. I mean, interesting is a relative term. I mean, those teams are pretty for Champions League quality. Not
It's
really.
more like a Europa League group.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, especially the way Conte manages in the Champions League and manages to cope. I guess Shakhtar and Leipzig for second place of Group F, but the problem is like you're looking at who can finish second of some of these groups. Like Porto and well, maybe if Atletico finish second, maybe they can do some damage in the knockout stage next year. But like, really, can they? They'll need to turn it around big time. I mean, Tottenham, Marseille, Sporting, Eintracht. Tottenham can definitely do some damage, but the other three clubs, pretty much whoever I think they'll get drawn up against in the round of 16, they'll just be cannon fodder for. I'm really hoping Milan get out of their group because I know Salzburg are a decent team, but Milan have genuinely very good players who I want to see playing in the knockout stage of the Champions League, and then Leipzig or Shakhtar in what is that Group F. Again, I think Leipzig can maybe cause a headache for one or two, but for the most part, I think they'll just be cannon fodder as well. So yeah, it's like even if we're looking at who can get out of the group, like, are we really excited about it? The only one that I have big excitement for is Milan, who are a team that I genuinely want to see in the next stage. But your Leipzigs, your Shakhtars, your Atleticos to a lesser extent. I guess Atletico I want to see in the next stage as well. So they're my two that, for a football perspective, I really want to get out of the group. But I mean, if you don't get out of the group, it's because you did something wrong. You had 6 games to put it right, and you couldn't manage to. So how much do you deserve to be in the knockout stage if you can't even get out of your group? I mean, there's other things that go into it as well. I think Barca are a team who, if they were in any other group, I think probably would have got out of it relatively comfortable, but they were given the group of death and an Inter team who somehow, out of nowhere, found performances in back-to-back games against them. So yeah, it's one of those. It could go either way. I mean, you've got 6 games, but things could go wrong pretty quickly in 6 games, like we've seen for Barcelona and Milan in the back-to-back stage of the competition or the group stage.
You know what? A thought just came like, haven't Inter been in like this type of group like for the
Mm.
past 3 or 4 seasons where they're always matched up with like either Barca or Bayern plus another strong team? Like, wasn't last year weren't they matched up with City and was City and Bayern in the same group or no?
Well, they couldn't have been because Inter got out of their group last season because we played them in the round
I
of
thought they got.
16.
Oh yeah. Wait, but
But it seems that
who?
way because I think probably a couple of seasons ago, and they had a
I
little
can
run.
have a look at it.
Yeah, do it. But it seems like they've had a run of
Um.
groups of death.
Okay, so no, so last season they had Inter and so it was Inter, Real, Sheriff, Shakhtar. I think it might have been the season before that. No, well the season before that it was Real, Mönchengladbach, Shakhtar, and Inter finished last in that group.
Lost. It was
Yeah.
That was under
That was
Conte,
that was
wasn't it?
2021. I think so. Yeah, Conte's first season. Uh, ah, going back a couple of seasons, Barca, Dortmund, Inter. This was back when Dortmund were actually
Yeah.
pretty good, like still.
Yeah.
And then so that was 1920. Just going back to 1819 because I think they had. So Barca, Tottenham, Inter. Yeah, so they've had they always seem to be stuck in these crappy groups where like there's probably a team in there that should be in one of the other groups that's like more of a Europa League group.
Yeah, can we?
Like for instance, Group D that year was Porto, Schalke, Galatasaray, Lokomotiv Moscow.
Yeah, exactly. Can we? Can we? We need to find a way to reseed this, or we need to. I think the seeding's all right. Actually, we just need to not put the Europa League winners as a top seed. That's a joke for me. Find a way to put
Yeah, they
some.
shouldn't be top seed.
Yeah, put a better club as a top, because then we get this Tottenham group that we got this season. It's just that's a joke of a group. Like we say, it's Europa League quality.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so we pretty much wrapped up, I guess, today's pod. Unless you have anything more to add in regards to the Champions League fixtures for this week, or no? We pretty much
No,
done
I'm
all that.
just my final thought on the Champions League fixtures is I don't know. I should be more excited going into match day 5, but I don't know. I don't know what we're
Yeah,
watching.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, bring on the quarters. Like not even the round of 16, because round of 16 you're going to get some of these cannon fodder matchups.
well, we'll see
Then
what,
there'll be
but
one or
we'll
two,
get some good ones as well. We'll get 2 or 3.
one or two.
I reckon 2 or 3.
Yeah,
We'll get to, we'll assess it after match day 5. I reckon we'll see how it might shape up
who's
in terms of who's first, who's
guaranteed,
second. Yeah,
what groups are guaranteed. Yeah, but you essentially get like in the quarters is when you're going to get like the tier A teams playing against each other. Not like tier A as in like maybe more tier A based on reputation and history, but not but like Inter isn't tier A, but you still want to see Inter versus I don't know like a PSG or something like because Inter is still decent, you know. They can put up like a better fight against PSG than like a Club Bruges. No offense to Club Bruges. So that's essentially where I'm going with this. But yeah, like that's bring on the quarters, but that's what next year in March, I guess.
let's hope
Yeah.
let's hope a really good second place finisher gets Club Bruges. Because I don't want to see Club Brugge in a quarterfinal, please. Good God. Like, if they were to get, like, a Shakhtar or something like that, and then they're into the quarters by default because they played no one. Oh, like, sorry, Club Brugge, but please, leave this competition. You don't belong. I know you do belong because you've got to finish top of your group, but please.
Look,
Simon Mignolet is your best player. No, I don't know about
they
that.
could get Inter. They could get Inter or possibly Barca, depending on who gets out of that group, or like one of the other groups, like a Benfica
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
PSG.
let's hope for that.
But like, yeah, look, just before we wrap it up, uh, just a sort of quick thought, or just like maybe get your thoughts on this. I think the FA Cup round 1 has started this week, or it's starting next week, and they were talking about that and how I guess the competition, at least for the younger generation, or even like a lot of the teams, it's lost its prestige, or it's maybe not necessarily its prestige, but it's luster, and like where the top teams they're not fully focused on it like they used to be. Um, like if you have the choice between fielding your strongest team for a Champions League quarterfinal or semi-final at the expense of the FA Cup, you're going to be doing that. Um, so do you think that there maybe should be more on the line for the FA Cup? I know right now, like the FA Cup winner gets a Europa League spot if they don't qualify for the Europa League through the league or the Champions League through the league. Do you think there maybe should be a Champions League spot, for instance? Because you're like, if you look at the past winners over the last like 10 years, it's been what? City, Arsenal, Liverpool, I'm not sure. Chelsea might have won it as well in the past 10 years. I'm not sure whether they have, but it's essentially been. I think Mourinho won it with Man United, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So like you're not getting like what back in the like mid 2000s, like what you had Portsmouth that won it. I think there was another team from the possibly the championship that won it, or like from the lower
They didn't win it,
Premier
but
League.
Millwall made the final in '04, I think.
Yeah, but do you think that maybe put up a Champions League spot for it potentially? But then you're only getting the top three in the league.
Well, you can't do it at the expense of the fourth place in the league. No way for me, because I don't know. It's just a more fair indication of who your Champions League representatives should be by going through the league. So that's my conundrum, and that's what I was going to ask you. Like, what can you put on the line to make the FA Cup more interesting?
Yeah, because right now it's just Europa League spots.
Well, there's one thing. There's one thing I guess we're not mentioning, and that's that I can't remember which season it starts, but pretty soon the Champions League goes up to what 48 teams or whatever they're doing. So
Yeah,
I know that it's not their goal to add more English teams to the Champions League. I know they're going up to 48 teams so that they can get a more diverse cross section from all over Europe into the group stage. But
more cannon fodder.
yeah, more cannon fodder, exactly. I don't know. I don't know what we could do to make the FA Cup more interesting for the bigger teams, because it's still interesting for the smaller clubs. They still get a
Oh yeah,
chance if they get to round three to play one of the big boys and to generate a lot of income from that as well. So
yeah.
it's just, I guess one thing that we could do is get rid of the League Cup. We don't need the League Cup at all, and just have one domestic cup to focus on. Maybe that generates more interest just by addition by subtraction of a competition. Um, but yeah, I think it's still interesting because, like we said, it's a competition that's not for the big clubs anymore, which is good and bad in a way. But it's a competition for the smaller clubs, the minnows, the ones who the round three draw is probably always the most interesting part of the FA Cup until you maybe reach the semis. Another thing that we can do, and I don't know if it has anything to do with what we're talking about, but we can stop playing semi-finals at Wembley. I think that's a joke for me. Wembley Stadium should be reserved for the final only. Let's go back to playing
I can
semi.
get behind that.
Yeah, go back to playing semi-finals at Old Trafford and Villa Park. I mean, or whichever big stadiums make sense for the two teams who are competing in it. Because I know last season both City and Liverpool were pretty annoyed at having to go down to Wembley to play their semi-final when they probably could have just played up north somewhere in a big stadium there. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's another thing we could look at doing. But yeah, the FA Cup. I mean, it's the big thing for me is like I feel like I'm pretty down with a lot of football knowledge and a lot of winners of competitions and stuff. I couldn't name you off the top of my head the last five winners of the FA Cup. So even my interest in it has sort of waned, but it can be entertaining when we get to semi-finals, and that third round is pretty entertaining. But in terms of putting something on the line, I just don't know what it is at this stage.
Well, if UEFA were to give a fifth place to England, which, in all honesty, I wouldn't mind seeing a fifth English team, considering the league is even more competitive now, especially with Newcastle getting funding and United possibly being back on track. Possibly, at least
What's
early
this?
signs.
What's this I'm hearing?
Early signs, at least. But but yeah, giving that fifth, because then, for instance, you could get that team that's battling for that fourth spot. Because like top two are generally, at least for the last couple of seasons, they'll be guaranteed between Liverpool and City. So it's like who's getting third or fourth, and then like a team that's maybe like for instance West Ham last year, they had to decide, are we going to battle for Europa League or are we going to battle for the for fourth spot, and then they ended up deciding somewhere in the middle, because I remember there was that I think just before the semi final, they played Arsenal and they fielded pretty much their strongest 11 bar one or two players, and they lost that game. It's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're out. You actually, like, at that point they were actually out of top four contention. Like, mathematically they could have done it, but they would have needed like Arsenal and Tottenham to lose every single one of their games. Um, but yeah, like they chose to sort of split between the two, and that ended up costing them. But could the FA Cup have then been a road for them? Could they have taken that more seriously, or like could Arsenal have taken that more seriously, or could Tottenham have taken that more seriously, considering like that top four wasn't guaranteed for either of them until the last three games of the season? So, and now, like for instance, Newcastle, if they can't get top four, maybe they could have got Champions League through an FA Cup run, and I think that would be based on at least early season results. They'd be deserving of a Champions League spot. Whether they can maintain this form or these results and the way they play until the end of the season, um, yeah, like it would be interesting to see them back in the Champions League as well.
It's kind of disappointing that we have to talk about one of only four major trophies that are on up for grabs in the, or three major trophies that are up for grabs in the British or the English. I guess you got Welsh teams in there too, but in the English footballing calendar, there's only three major trophies you can win, and the FA Cup's easily the second most major, and we're talking about having to put more motivations on it for players and clubs to try and win it. I think that's kind of disappointing at the stage we're at, but it kind of goes into my point of addition by subtraction. If we get rid of the League Cup as well, now you've only got two domestic cups that you can win. So yeah, that might
Well,
just be something to look at.
well, with something like, for instance, FA Cup, Champions League spot, League Cup, Europa League spot,
Yeah, yeah, that could
or
work.
or
But
or
like
conference or conference league spot
yeah,
for the League Cup.
it all depends on what UEFA can do with those spots as well. Because
Well, I don't think it's
if you start giving it for the FA Cup, you've got to give it for all those major domestic competitions. So, and then we run into a bit of a, do we want to give it for, I don't know, the Serie A, or not the
well,
Serie, the Italian
the
Cup
FA.
winners or whatever?
I don't think UEFA has a say on it. I think it's up to the domestic leagues
Yeah,
how they
exactly.
want to
And
divide up the spot,
but yeah,
because they gave an FA Cup the FA Cup winner Europa League qualification.
yeah, it's always been that way. But then that goes back to you'd have to take it off top four. So it's no,
Yeah,
that's
in
I
this
don't, yeah.
instance, yeah.
I think that's something I would be prepared to do.
Yeah, because wasn't Europa League, at least for a couple of seasons ago, it was fifth, sixth, and seventh. Now it's only fifth and sixth.
That sounds right.
Yeah, but then last year Liverpool won it, so obviously they're not going to get a Europa League spot. So how come seventh didn't get Europa League?
I don't know. Seventh got conference.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with them, but yeah, look, maybe it's a conversation for another day. Maybe the FA need to start listening to us a little bit more, or UEFA need to start listening to us a little bit more. But then you might also have people like Gary Neville or whatever, can't like if they were ever to catch wind. Oh, you're trying to come in. Yeah.
He'll send a tweet. Australians are more of a threat to the game than the sovereign nations.
We need to send our prisoners back there and recolonize them, bring them back under control. They're getting they're getting out of hand.
Messing with the fabric of
Um,
English football. Good God.
but yeah, look, I think that brings us to a wrap of today's pod. We managed to keep it slightly shorter. Hopefully, there is no issues. This whole time it said encoding overloaded, consider turning down video settings or using a faster encoding preset. I think it might only be a little bit. Hopefully, it's not frame-ish. I don't know what the issue might be. This hasn't come up before, but hopefully people listening and watching, they don't have any issues.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Anyway, Caleb, it's been a pleasure.
As always.
For everyone listening, thanks for coming and bye for now.